finally this month, let's talk about water and water bottles versus bowls. Firstly, water bottles, glass water bottles are great. We much prefer them. Yes, they're more expensive, but they last a lot longer. And importantly for us, you can put them in the dishwasher, which really, truly sterilizes them. You can put both parts in and you know it's getting a very good clean. The plastic water bottles are okay. Obviously they're lighter and they're cheaper, but they're not as recyclable if you want to argue that point. But you can't put them in the dishwasher. Believe me, I've tried and it melted. And for that reason, I always suggest and prefer glass bottles because you can clean them more. You've all seen those plastic bottles with the green inside, the algae. That's not going to be good for any animal. So, glass bottles for us, each to their own, but you know my recommendation. Now, in the summer, it's grand, other than you're wanting to keep your ferrets cool. So it might be that you want to pop a few ice cubes in here or even freeze a little bit of water for them to lick a little bit. But that's something we'll talk about in the summer. But for the water bottle, in the winter, the little carrot, obviously ferrets don't eat carrots, but work with us. I think they're designed for rabbits. Putting the little carrot in there actually means that if there's a layer of frost or ice on the very top, as they pull, it'll pull that carrot down, which should mean that they can actually, because that will be floating at the top and it'll have frozen into the top layer of the water, which means if it's just a layer, a frozen layer on the top of the water, it should mean that as that carrot pulls down, when the ferret goes to drink, it'll still mean that there's a flow of water through there. It's very important with any bottle that you get it at the right angle, because if it's at the wrong angle, this won't actually happen and allow the ferret to drink. So it's very important you get it at the right angle, and whenever you put it in, always make sure that that is giving you water onto your finger. If it's not, you've got it wrong and that ferret's going to go without water, which isn't clever. This, I was given by a lovely friend, is edible glycerin. I've written it on. I don't have the full bottle of it, but this is edible glycerin. And essentially, this does the same job as the carrot, but more so. So on a hard frost, if you literally put a drop or two of this into your water bottle, it'll stop the water from freezing. And that is really good to know because, again, it's so important that ferrets have access to water and food, obviously. So that's your bottles. Water bowls. Those of you who have ferrets will know full water bowls and ferrets never mix. You're much more likely to get the situation of empty water bowl, puddle, wet ferret. That is much more likely. Ways round it? Well, firstly, in the living room at least, we have a massive dog bowl, a heavy ceramic dog bowl. It's about this wide. And because of the weight of it with water in, it does stop them. They can still push it and slosh a bit of the water out. But it's some way towards it. But that isn't necessarily going to work in a smaller cage situation because it'll take up the entire cage. So a couple of other options. Not foolproof still, but the idea of a bowl within a bowl can quite often help, and they're less able to knock it around as much, although they will still give it a darn good try. And we find this is better for the food, for not tipping over food, but you can try it depending on your fertile. It might work, especially for girls, because as we all know, it's the boys who are Egypts. Ferrets, that's all I'm talking about. The other option, and these are great. Again, they're not cheap, but this is the crock bowls that you get, and it does depend on what you're attaching them to. But if it's in a cage situation, those can go through. They can tie that way or that way. You literally clunk it onto the cage. That stays in position, and that is now, once I've turned it, there we go, that is sturdy. That ain't going nowhere. And that's a good one, so that they can put their paws in it and they can drink from it, but they really can't get water out of it any other way. So this is, if you're not going on water bottles, I would say this is your foolproof way of doing it. And we do hopefully, we will be stocking these in our web store very soon. Very quickly then, just for food, for ferret kibble and things like that, as I've said before, you can try the bowl inside a bowl method, and again it just stops them being able to spit it everywhere. Watch out if you're using like a dish bowl, like a human sort of dessert bowl thing, because sometimes that rounded end can mean that, again, it's much more easy to tip over. Again, we find the lower straight edged pet bowls much better for food, but again, whatever works for you. Some ferrets will eat out of this, no bother, and some will just take it and scatter it over a large area. It's ferret, what can you do?